It started with a knock at the door that felt more like a tax audit in envelope form. A man in a neon vest with an electric scooter and a smug grin handed me a certified letter like he was delivering a bomb he couldn't wait to see explode. "You've been served by Maple Hollow Homeowners Association," he said, like it was a royal decree. "I live on Falcon Creek, a piece of land my grandfather carved out in 1952 with a pickaxe, a hammer, and sheer willpower. He didn't build it for prestige or show. He built it because he believed a man should be able to shape his life on land he owned outright, no questions asked. He planted every tree, dug every post hole, and raised a barn with his own hands. That kind of legacy doesn't just vanish because someone draws a new line on a map. Maple Hollow HOA didn't even exist until 1991, and yet somehow this letter claimed I owed them 30 years of back dues totaling $78,453.36. I had to reread the number 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. My coffee went cold as I laughed, cried, then laughed again. That was the moment I knew I was about to go to war. I sat at the breakfast table, staring at the itemized invoice like it was some ancient scroll of nonsense. They'd billed me for annual dues going back to 1993, complete with late penalties, interest accumulation, and something called a Community Heritage Beautification Levy, which I'm pretty sure is HOA code for "we want a new fountain." They even added fines for violations I never committed: non-regulation fencing, unauthorized vegetable planting, and my personal favorite, excessive independence. That last one got to me. It wasn't just the absurdity of it. It was the arrogance. As if a group of strangers could slap a fine on someone for the sin of not marching in step. As if personality, history, and grit could be classified as infractions. I marched down to the HOA office that afternoon, still in my boots and work shirt, dirt on my hand from repairing my tractor shed. The HOA headquarters was one of those beige prefab buildings that looks like it sells bad real estate and accidental life insurance. Inside, the walls were covered in laminated signs with phrases like "community starts with compliance" and "harmony through regulation." Behind the reception desk sat Veronica. If you've ever met an HOA president who thinks they're the mayor, sheriff, and Supreme Court rolled into one, you've met Veronica. Bleach blonde bob, pearls too tight around her neck, and a permanent expression like she was smelling something offensive. She had a gavel on her desk, a real one, like she expected to need it before lunch. "Can I help you?" she asked in a tone that really meant. "Why are you breathing near me?" I placed the letter on the counter. "Sure can. This says I owe you folks $78,000 for fees going back 30 years. "Yes, that's correct," she said, tapping her keyboard with long manicured nails. "According to our records, your property falls within Maple Hollow jurisdiction." "Maple Hollow didn't exist when my property was built," I replied. "You folks weren't even paved in until '94. She smiled the kind of smile that could curdle milk. "That may be, but boundaries shift over time. The community evolved. Your land is now part of the HOA district. So let me get this straight," I said, leaning in. "You moved your fences, drew your map wider, and now you think you own my land like it's a game of Monopoly?" She stood up. "Sir, refusal to pay these dues may result in legal action, including property liens." I laughed out loud, loud enough that 2 other residents in the lobby turned to look. "Lady, my deed predates your entire neighborhood." "Then you'll have to take it up with the board," she said coolly. "But be warned, they've never overturned a fee dispute." As I walked out, I caught a glimpse of their district map on the wall. Someone had clearly used a red marker to expand the boundaries in bold strokes, sweeping up nearby properties like they were collecting lost sheep. I snapped a picture. Back home, I pulled out the original deed to Falcon Creek, signed by a state engineer in 1952, detailing my land ownership down to the inch. It sat outside any annexation district. I also found an old black and white photo of my grandfather standing proudly in front of the house, his name etched into the concrete porch step. That photo wasn't just sentimental. It was evidence. The next morning, I brought everything to my niece, Cassidy. She's a rising star attorney who once sued a corporate developer for chopping down century-old oaks and won. She glanced at the invoice, the deed, the map, and said, "Oh, they're in for it." Cassidy got to work immediately. She doesn't just dig for facts. She unearths truth like a dog after a buried bone. Within days, she uncovered the HOA's and corporation paperwork and their original map. My land? Never listed. She also found out they filed an expansion amendment years later, but failed to notify over a dozen landowners, including me. That wasn't just an oversight, it was procedural fraud. Meanwhile, the HOA doubled down. They sent another letter warning that non-compliance could result in community blacklisting, whatever that meant. Then an inspector showed up to cite me for having a mailbox that didn't match community standards. I told him it was from a World War II surplus store and had more character than his entire board. He didn't laugh. I did. By the end of the week, Veronica filed a preliminary lien on my property. That's when I knew they weren't just playing games. They were going full scorched earth. But they underestimated me. They didn't know I had documents, legal muscle, and a sense of justice that burned every time I looked at that invoice. Most of all, they didn't know I don't lose battles on land my grandfather built with his hands. If Maple Hollow wanted a war, I was ready to light the match. And that match, her name was Cassidy. She filed a formal response to the lien with citations so sharp they could have cut through metal. Every legal clause, every zoning detail, every notification requirement was outlined with surgical precision. I watched her, late into the night, her glasses slipping down her nose as she cross-referenced land grant statutes with county planning ordinances. She didn't just fight back. She dismantled their argument piece by piece. Meanwhile, I documented everything. Every drive-by patrol by Veronica, every unsolicited photo taken of my fence, every letter tucked in my mailbox threatening additional fines. I even installed a camera on the scarecrow in my garden. Named him Judge Straw. Caught an HOA inspector trespassing at 5:47 a.m. Cassidy labeled the footage as Exhibit C. Then came the turning point, the discovery of forged annexation documents. Cassidy compared signatures and dates across 3 different county filings. All of them supposedly signed by county officials on a Saturday. Identical handwriting, same pen stroke pressure. It was sloppy, almost arrogant. We brought it to a friend of hers in the registrar's office who verified it. Clear forgery. What Maple Hollow had done wasn't just overreach. It was a legal fantasy built on forged ink. That's when Cassidy said, "They just handed us the whole game." What followed was a cascade of unraveling. Public meetings turned hostile. Neighbors who once whispered compliance started voicing fury. A Facebook post exposing the forged documents went viral in 3 counties. Veronica called an emergency meeting in the clubhouse to defend the HOA's integrity. I showed up early, and when it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't pound the podium. I just held up the deed, the county letter, and the photo of my grandfather standing on the very porch they tried to regulate. This land was built before your bylaws, I said. Before your maps. Before your playground vision boards. And it will stand long after your rules fade like chalk in the rain. And the room? Silent. Like truth had punched the air out of it. That was the moment Maple Hollow lost its grip. Not just on me. On everyone